All right. Hello, people. Hope you're having a great day today. It is a Monday. It is pretty cold where I'm at. Blaine, how are you doing? Welcome
I'm
back.
doing good, thanks. Yeah. No, I'm doing really well. It's pretty chilly here too. So
Oh
it's
no.
which North Carolina is all over the place. It'll be like 80 one day and then like 40 the next. So
Yeah, pretty much the same right now in LA. It's
yeah.
like 80 during the day, 40 during the night, and time change is messing my brain.
Yeah.
Um, but we're joined today by Blaine Andrews from Criticless. Criticless is a fantastic new app that I was introduced to by Blaine and his team. Criticless is like a user friendly, community based app that allows people to not only form social networks, but also people to review and have the power of reviewing in their hands. Again, hence the name Criticless. There are no special pedestals for critics. And today,
Exactly.
Blaine, we're going to talk about a movie that is like all over my feed, all over YouTube. I'm not sure
It's
what to,
everywhere.
the Marvels. What did you think? You saw it recently,
I did. Yeah.
and what was your experience?
Yeah. So I had a very kind of special experience, which I told you about, like kind of
Right,
going into it, because it's one of those things where my daughter loves Captain Marvel and
right.
she really liked the first movie a lot. And I know that critically that movie caught a lot of grief. I actually did not have the like seething hatred that a lot of people did for that movie. I thought it was fine. Like I didn't think it was that bad. But I mean, a lot of people gave it a lot of crap. But my 10-year-old loved it, and and she was a bit younger at the time too. I mean, she's got like the action figures and all that stuff, and so she was very excited about this movie, so she wanted to go, and the two of us went. We had like a daddy daughter date and went and saw the movie together and spent the day, and she had an absolute blast. And
Yeah,
so it's one of those things where seeing having an experience like that with someone is probably also a little infectious, and it does kind of control your enjoyment of something. Kind of also like if you're with a person who talks through a film the entire time, it affects what you think about the movie,
yeah.
or a bad experience. Like the first time I saw Wonder Woman, I was sitting beside these atrocious people who were just like talking through the whole movie and heckling us and whatever, and I was like, the movie's fine, it's whatever. But it was like I
Hmm.
saw it later and I'm like, oh, this was actually a pretty good movie. It was just like what I was surrounded with.
Yeah.
So this was kind of the same situation where she loved it, and I asked her multiple times because she knows the Criticless scale and how it works, our rating scale, and I was like, what would you give it? She's like, it's most excellent. This is the most excellent movie. It's
Oh.
it's 95%. She's like, it's one of the. I was like literally one of the best movies you've ever seen. She was like, yes. She's like, what do the people in
Right.
the app think? And I was like, you might not want to see what the people in the app think.
Oh.
and
Oh.
and I showed her, and she was just like, I'm disappointed in everyone.
Oh, no. Well,
So you know
that's
I,
interesting. That's
yeah.
fascinating.
So
Yeah.
she did really enjoy it though, and
Yeah.
for me, I had fun being with her and seeing it, and I think that
Yeah.
it still even made me sway a little bit higher. Where she gave it a 95%, I personally gave it like a 65 out of 100.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
if I hadn't been with her, it probably would have been like maybe a 50.
Right.
So I mean, but still, I'm not out here like this is the worst movie ever made. So
Yeah. Okay. So funny enough that you say that. I personally, um, I have a very similar experience, and I would say my introduction to Carol Danvers to Captain Marvel, the first Captain Marvel, was very positive. At the time, of course, I wasn't exposed to this world of reviewing, so I was very closed off to anyone who had anything negative to say about Captain Marvel.
right,
I was just like, I see the trailer, I go watch the movie, I have my review. Not even sure if I saw it in the theaters or how that even happened, but I was like, this is decent, this is fine, and I should say I'm not really a superhero fan.
oh, okay,
I'm not even like I'm not deep into the comic book world. I just watch the movies, and I do love the Spider-Verse. I think Spider-Man is a very entertaining character. Apart from that, couldn't really tell you what's going on in the Marvel world. So with
yeah,
that background, I went into the Marvels, and it was I was in a small theater, and it was packed, and pretty much everyone was laughing at most of the jokes that revolved around Kamala Khan,
yeah,
which was like
same.
a few times. Like there were some good
Mhm.
like laughs, but other than that, um, I could tell that this was a movie that wasn't made for me. And I
Right.
think that was the conflicting part. I think that's a question that I want to talk about with a broader dialogue around it. But it wasn't necessarily that it was a bad movie. Like from a more adult, perspective, you can see where the editing was a bit off. You could see where the continuity was off. The costumes were not great. You could pick out all those
Hmm.
things. But if you were a younger viewer, I kind of feel like a lot of criticism about the movie is misaligned because it was made for a younger audience. Now, is that greed? Is that Marvel trying to cater to everyone so they can get the most money? I don't know. What are your thoughts? And yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a few things, and I mean, and that's the thing too. Is one of the things that I said in my review in Criticalist is that I feel like it's one of those things where this movie wasn't for us or for me or whatever the case may be. I mean, this was very much a young girl's movie. I mean, there are some scenes in here between, and we can get to it in a little bit, but like between cats invading a spaceship and like an entire musical planet, things like that that were just so wacky and out there and just not aligned with the rest of the MCU, and just these movies in general, that it was kind of out of place. And I don't know if all of that was, but those aspects were kind of catering towards this younger market. But
Hmm.
then the problem was still at the same time is that some of that stuff might have been able to work, but the movie was also kind of just a mess, and it was
Hmm.
cut to pieces and edited, and just you can tell, you can feel it in the scene changes, and the
Yeah.
movie is wall to wall. I mean, it does not
Right.
stop from the moment the movie gets going. It's just like boom, 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 from scene to scene, place to place, which keeps it entertaining, especially for the young audience.
Right.
But for adults who are just like, what, like what is happening, why are we going from scene to scene, like I don't even know what this movie's really about at this point.
Right.
And I think that it possibly was because they maybe in test screenings or whatever the case may be, they edited this movie down to appeal to that younger audience better. Like
Oh yeah.
maybe they were getting bored or whatever the case may be, but it definitely, you can feel that they were catering in that direction of like short and sweet, just keep your attention. And I don't know if the plot changed along the way or what, but all of that is kind of a mess too. And I think some of it is greed and
Yeah.
them trying to hit all the markets.
Yeah. And I'm curious. Okay, so I feel like if this was supposed to be a movie that is catering to, especially like the female audience, I personally feel like there's a huge letdown with the esteeming of the intellect of girls and people of color,
Right.
because it is not. I think one thing that I want to say to anyone who I doubt is watching this, but anyone who is in favor of the Marvels and in that whole sphere of very pro female characters in Marvel movies, which I'm not opposed to. I'll get to that in a second. But with this movie, I feel like it is worth talking about the level of quality in a
Hmm.
way that is in alignment with, hey, I actually am saying this for the sake of improving representation and improving the way characters are represented. I think a lot of reviewers have this sort of sentiment where they're like, hey, the reason I'm talking about this is because I feel like people's intelligence is or are being insulted, and we want to see better characters, we want to see better writing, we want to see better
Right.
film styles. Do you think there's any hope for any projects like this in the future after the numbers of
Ugh.
the Marvels?
Well, I mean, if if Disney and specifically, I guess, being that they own Marvel Studios, if they have proven anything to us, it's that they are not going to course correct when they
Right.
fail. So my guess is that even if with this being the failure, I don't know if there is a chance that they still might lean in this direction, just because Disney as a whole has been doing it, and very much more of the diversity focused as across the board, whether it be
Yeah.
race, gender, whatever the case may be. They're really have honed in on that. And I don't know, because Disney is struggling as a whole, and there has been some news that has come out during all of this. Now it's been
Hmm.
more on their TV show side, but
Right.
essentially they are, well, like next year they have one movie coming out all year, and I think it's
Oh
Deadpool.
wow. Okay.
And so with them cutting back on that, it seems like they might actually be listening a little bit with their only. I mean, we were at like 3 or 4 movies and however many shows like every year, and they're
Right.
pulling back because nothing's been doing well since Endgame, and they completely shifted gears and started throwing all these characters that their core audience doesn't really care that much about, and
Right.
which is a bit of a problem. And that's not to say that this type of thing can't be done right, because it can.
Mhm.
And it's just that I think that when you do put your core focus in only the diversity aspect, whether it is in casting and even people involved with the creation and everything, when that is your sole focus and not on, and we talked about this last time we talked too, it's like I think that their mind and their focus becomes off of the actual project itself and just everyone
Mhm.
involved.
Right. I wonder, like, do you is this a sign of well, hopefully they figure this out, but is this a
Right.
sign of DEI not working, or is this a sign of the reality that white men rule the world, and therefore if white men don't like projects, they actually fail? Does
You
that
know
make
that
sense?
you're right. No, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, right, right. Their money is the one that's speaking, apparently. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, I really don't know. That's a pretty funny question. Because really, I think that people would still show up if it hadn't been due to, like you say, with the DEI stuff, also the toxicity around a lot of people involved with these projects. And that's the thing, is when you insult your core audience, like when you insult the people who are giving you money, I mean, that's not great.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of what's been happening is why Brie Larson has gotten so much hate over the years, is because of the stuff that she's come out and said,
Hmm.
and just kind of across the board. And I think that we are definitely seeing a repercussion of that. And I kind of hate that in regards to this movie, because this movie isn't bad. It's not great,
Hmm.
but it's not bad. And we're seeing this like full blown, basically like jihad against this movie from
Right.
everybody that's not on the left. Basically,
Yeah.
everybody is just coming at it with pitchforks. And I'm like, guys,
Yeah.
the thing is we do need to be honest about this. And I mean, I think looking
Right.
through a more clear lens, if you were to approach the Marvels, it would be like, this isn't the best movie ever, but it's not the worst thing I've ever seen. The
Hmm.
MCU is dead. You know, we should, like with Loki, they're all turning on the show Loki that's out right now too, the same
Mm.
people. And it's like, Loki's actually quite good. And I've watched it all and really enjoyed it. And it's pretty neat.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if we're not complimenting them on the good things they do and we're just trashing everything that they do across the board, then why would they not just double down then? I mean,
Hmm.
if we're just like, well, it's all bad, and they're like, well, fine, then we're just maybe this will level itself out eventually, you know, and we'll get the audience we're looking for.
Right. Exactly. I do you think this is like a proxy for? Do you think everything going on with TV and movies right now, especially with I love the way you said everything that's not on the left, because not necessarily the right. You have
Right,
people across the pond who are also chiming in on this, but
right.
everyone who does not like what is happening in Hollywood and what is happening with the left is sort of turning against this. Is our movies, especially Disney and Marvel, Star Wars underneath that umbrella,
Yeah.
proxy for a larger cultural battlefield of people using these dollars to make a statement? Or is this part of something bigger?
I think it most definitely is. I mean, and we saw, I guess it's been since we talked last, the whole Panderverse issue. I don't know if you heard about that, the big South Park episode.
Man, I don't like South Park.
Yeah,
I do not have the energy for South Park. But what
right.
happened with that?
Long story short, basically they created a single episode movie of South Park, and it was called the Panderverse, and it was ripping on Marvel and Star Wars. And
Mhm,
basically they actually went after the heads of Disney and of Star Wars, so Kathleen Kennedy. And
mhm,
basically the reason it's called the Panderverse is they're talking about that, you know, that they're pandering to people.
yeah.
And so the whole concept of this episode was basically targeting Disney and Marvel and all these things. And the quote from the show in the episode is basically that no matter what happens, Kathleen Kennedy wants them to put a woman in it, make her lame, and make her gay, just across the board. on anything that
Aw.
comes out. And so
Right.
it was kind of one of those, they're very much just poking at the DEI stuff. And
Mhm.
it kind of set the world on fire for a few days. And Gina Carano got involved. I don't know if you know who she is.
Yes, I do, yeah.
Yeah, she got really involved and was kind
Oh.
of speaking on it because she got fired from Disney. And so
Mhm.
this was a big saga for the past couple weeks. And I think that what we are seeing with the Marvel is most definitely people speaking with their wallets.
Right. Did you think or find the Marvels to be a woke movie?
All in all, it was no. I think the stuff that was going on in the Marvels was very subtle, and this was another under my political bias section in the review I did.
Mhm.
I basically the what I noticed was it was all very subtle, but that there was in the movie all of the men, all of them,
Mhm.
including Nick Fury, were just soft. They were a bunch
Yeah.
of weak, soft men, and that's how this world operates in the very, woke world is the demasculinization, and that I saw in this film. Nick Fury is usually, just the bad to the bone dude who's, getting
Yeah.
stuff done, but instead he's just this guy that's hugging and loving all over kitty cats and
Mhm.
and then Kamala's father spent the whole movie being protected by his wife.
Right.
I mean, literally to the point in which she used herself as like a meat shield and jumped over top of him to save him. And
Mm.
so it's subtle things like that. Also, it was a weird thing that I noticed that I haven't heard anybody talking about. And I was
Mhm.
like, maybe it was just me. And I don't really care about this sort of thing that much, but it was more of just a noticing it is that I don't think that there is a single white dude in this entire film, start to finish. I'm talking, you could pack out a crowd of people and you still wouldn't spot one. And
Huh.
I'm like, when you do that, that's kind of obvious. Like it's
Huh.
almost comes across as intentional. Now, like I said, do I really care that much? No. But like it is one of those things where when you know the people behind some of these projects and stuff, it's like, does that come across that way when you're interacting in a whole world and multiple universes full of people and you can't spot
Mhm.
a certain type of person? It's like, that's a little weird.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Those are the two main things that jumped out to me. But do I think it's a woke movie? No, not
Yeah.
really.
I noticed the same thing. I feel like I I was actually of the persuasion that the cuts that we saw, that like the kind of rough editing, and it just felt like a pudding of like different
Hmm.
cakes, and then you just mix everything together and hope it makes one good other, cake. I feel like they actually, to a degree, might have wanted to tone down on certain things that might have been very obvious in the beginning.
Yeah.
Um, because I couldn't really, apart from the black girl magic line,
Hmm.
which I don't know, that took me out of the movie so
It did.
much because it was in a scene where also the CGI was very bad. So I was like, oh no,
Right.
what's happening? But apart from that, I do feel like they tried a little bit. They tried to tone things down.
Hmm.
Um, but that is interesting what you said, that there probably wasn't like a white male character. Now, honestly, I was not paying attention, and I saw it on Thursday, so I
Right.
believe you, but I
Yeah. I
also
mean,
don't remember what I saw. Um, but I wonder what you think of this. What's up with the wanting to push representation into a space such as like Marvel and comic books, right?
right.
Um, and then I don't get it. Like again, I'm coming as an outsider into this world, kind of looking through the mirror. What's
Right.
with the wanting to have a space in Marvel and then wanting to, kick out the existing fans, whatever that might mean, whether they are overly represented as white men? Like I'm trying to understand how that's working out. Like what's with the wanting the cake, having the cake and eating it too kind of dynamic at play there.
Right. Yeah. I really don't understand it at all because I've been part of this world for my whole life. I've been a big comic book junkie. And
Mhm.
honestly, the comic book space in general, even before the MCU took off and made comic book movies good, was very inclusive. Like it was not a type of a space where it was hyper toxic or anything like that. The biggest
Mhm.
thing that it would get accused for was like over sexualization of women,
Yeah.
which everybody has known has kind of been a comic book thing. You just have superheroes and giant poops, it's just
Right.
kind of how they always were.
Yeah.
But now it seems like they've leaned so hard in the other direction that it's this um I don't know what market they're going after, because I can't
Yes.
imagine that it's bigger than what they had. And clearly they had the greatest success of any franchise in history, period,
Hmm.
outside of maybe Star Wars. And yet they're insulting and pushing out their original audience. And to where they could have just slowly started bringing in different types of characters. I mean, even if you look at the first Black Panther movie, it did gangbusters. And I mean, that
Hmm.
was a 100% Black created, casted across the board, and it did phenomenal. And I
Right.
mean, I actually was not super crazy about the movie. I think it's all right. I don't think that it was like the god tier of movies that everybody made it out to be, but I still think it was a very competent film and it was a good movie. It
Hmm.
just wasn't what from the comics and just what I loved about that character and stuff. It missed some of that for me, but that's neither here nor there. I mean, but I think that shows its success, shows that if they had kept on the track and just moved along
Hmm.
naturally on the path that they were on, it would have been fine. Versus, now they're dubbed. I don't know if you've heard, but like the nickname for Marvel now is the MCU, like SHE. Um,
Right.
and they are kind of earning that a little bit. And to the
Yeah.
point of, I mean, they're literally building a superhero team that this movie alludes to. I guess spoilers,
Hmm.
but for young people. And it's right now, currently, as far as we know, almost all female, like Avengers team, basically.
Mm.
So
Interesting.
they're still headed in that direction. And I just don't
Yeah.
really, this isn't like, men have no problem watching female superheroes. The problem is, I think a lot of the times, like with Captain Marvel, when these heroes are unrealistically portrayed, like Captain Marvel is a Superman tier hero, right?
Hmm.
Except for she has no kryptonite. So she's
Yeah.
just a god.
Yeah. Right.
And
It,
I don't know how you grow upon that.
yeah. That's, oh man, there's so many parts in the movie where I felt like I just didn't know who Carol was. I was struggling to connect. I was sort of like, I don't know. I was just like, who is this? What's going on? What
Right.
am I supposed to feel emotionally at different parts? But yeah, all in all, I hear you. I think they're setting Disney and Marvel and whatever is going on with the ideology driving a lot of these scripts. I think they're setting up people to, they're kind of by vilifying an outgroup and saying, hey, let's bring in these diverse characters. And instead of it being this harmonious balance between different groups, equally and equitably, which is the correct use of the term, is
Right.
treating everyone equitably is because you believe they're equal. They're vilifying a certain group, whether that's the fans outside of the screen or on screen, by not representing, say, like limiting the representation of, say, like white men, and then putting, I think they are responsible for a lot of the resentment that we see building. And I think a lot of it is disproportionate. Like there
Mhm.
is a big outcry, like you said earlier.
Yeah.
But I think they have to realize, like, at some point, whether they or not they listen, there is a sort of responsibility for, you are vilifying a group, and do not be surprised if that group also, in their own form of media and representation and with their dollars, chooses not to respect that form of depiction. Anyway, I could go on and on with that, but
Yeah.
I don't know what's the future of comic movies. Do you think, is this superhero fatigue? Do you
Y-
believe in that?
You know, I think that to a degree, it is happening to some people.
Hmm.
But I think these hardcore fans, the people that are really turning on it, it's not really superhero fatigue. It's just it is industry fatigue. It
Yeah.
is the state of where things are. And these folks are speaking with their, with their wallet. And I think, you will get something like superhero fatigue if you're launching 4 movies a year and, 4 shows a year, and they're all connected and you have to see them all to know what's going on. That
Yeah.
to a degree is going to happen. They thought that that would work with this audience.
Hmm.
And the audience had grown so big outside of just comic book people.
Hmm.
And I think people are struggling the regular folks are struggling to keep up with that. And
Yeah.
that's what's come from comic book culture. I mean, I've collected comic books my whole life, and you would do this thing where a run that you were reading would branch off into, Punisher would branch off into Spider-Man, and all of a sudden you find yourself reading Spider-Man for the next 6 months. And
Hmm.
that's exactly what has happened with these movies. And it is going to
Right.
turn off some of the people like you who are like, hey, I just want to see a fun action movie. And you're
Right.
just like, but I didn't watch these other 10 things. And so it's like, I love that concept of it, where it's like, yeah, I've watched it all and I know it all. But I think that
Right.
audience is still smaller than what they were pulling before.
Right.
And so, yeah, they're struggling from that.
Oh yeah. I just wanted to read. We have a couple comments. Mike Vasquez says, "I don't give money to people who insult me." Yes, especially in this. I mean, I'm feeling the pinch. Like economically, things are changing here. How about are things the same on the coast where you're at?
It's not like it is where you are.
Okay.
It's not that bad, but I mean,
Yeah.
people are still most definitely feeling it. The groceries are through the roof. The gas is still quite high. It's not you guys high, but it's high.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
still, it's people are feeling it, and I think that that's another thing for these diminishing returns on movies and things, is that people are like, well, look, I'm seeing a lot of bad press about this. A lot of people aren't liking it, and so why would I see it in the theater? I'll wait for it to come out on Disney Plus in like 3 months
Right. Yeah.
and see
That's
it for
exactly
free.
right. Elizabeth Maddock says, when people say they don't give money to people who insult me, what happened? I think I missed something because I stopped following Marvel movies after Infinity War. Yep. I quit Marvel due to what they did to Loki in Infinity War, but I did enjoy his show and the final episode. But now that Loki's story is wrapped up, I can go back to ignoring Marvel movies. Yes. Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen Loki. You said it was great. Do you have
It
any
is
response
pretty
to
good.
that?
Yeah, I mean, well, as far as what happened, a lot of it was just the crosstalk from a lot of these different executives and people involved, like with the people involved with Star Wars, who, said, they notoriously said the Force is female, and everybody's like, well, the majority of your audience forever has been men, so fine, like we don't have a problem with women being in these movies, but like to say that you're just gonna abandon this one audience, and a lot of that has carried over across Disney, and I think that that's just what's happened, is they own all of these phenomenal IPs, and they
Mhm.
just keep not doing what the fans want. They just are
Yeah.
kind of doing what they're wanting to do and what they're told to do, I guess, from
Yeah,
these
yeah, yeah.
DEI experts.
Okay, DEI experts. I want to give a little bit of a parallel to what Sony seems to be doing with Spider-Man,
Yeah.
um, or the whole licensing thing. I don't quite know what's
Mhm.
going on, but in my opinion, I don't seem to see, well, in a way, some ways, but I don't seem to see the same forced thing going on with Spider-Man. What have you observed? Do you think Spider-Man is suffering from the same symptoms, or is it going a different path?
So the weird thing is, MCU Spider-Man, which is still owned by Sony, is not
Hmm.
doing that at all. But I think, and I don't think it is heavily, but they do some of that with the Miles Morales stuff, even in the
Hmm.
like the video game that I recently got, with that Spider-Man game, which is technically still Sony. They're doing it in other places, but not as large of a scale, where it's like the new Spider-Verse movie came out, and Miles is rocking like a BLM button on his backpack, and
Oh
there's
yeah,
a pride flag in Gwen's room, and
I do
or a
remember that.
trans
Yes.
flag actually. So they're it's more subtle though. And one of them, actually, I saw a toy when I was looking for my kids' toys, and there was a weird Spider Woman toy, but it just looked like a giant robotic man, and I was really confused. But it said Spider
Mm,
Woman on it, and I'm just like, I didn't even see this character in the movie. What even is
mhm.
this? But it was from the movie. The toy was, so I thought that was really odd too. So I'm like, clearly there's some more subtle things happening in there that we're not seeing, but I don't think it's
Right.
nearly as extreme as what we're seeing on the other side of things. Now, granted, like we said, this movie was not nearly as offensive as everyone's pretending it is.
Yes.
It just wasn't.
Yeah. Diamond Lace says the superhero movies beyond Spider, Super, Batman confuses me. I get confused over who these different characters are. Yes, honestly, same. I'm just like in my zone with Spider-Man, and I think it's just easier for my brain to understand what's happening in video games because they're longer, they're more immersive. You get
Mhm.
all the details you need from the one game. They're not going to make you do too much homework. Um, so I just feel like the reason I brought up the Spider-Man thing is I feel like if they can do it with Spider-Verse, even though there are those subtle like drops, I
Right.
feel like it's it's possible. Like Disney, for the
Mhm.
Disney people, for the writers, for the directors, like it is possible to still create superhero characters and have people love them, have people show up, have people not feel insulted, but still represent a diverse group of people. Briefly talking about Spider-Man, I saw on Critic List
Yeah.
that said there were some woke things in the Spider-Man 2 game. What did you
Yeah.
notice?
There is one small plot of a side mission where you're literally setting up a gay couple and their date, and you're going through all the steps to like help them go to prom together, and it's very much pointing at that.
Right.
There's actually also, oh god, what was it? There was another race-based thing that was like literally the plot to one of the side missions, like about race, and actually multiple, almost anything involving Miles, they will sneak it in for a lot of the Miles stuff. And that's where I'm kind of like, this is kind of cringy, guys. Like, to me, I don't know, I feel like I would be offended if, just because of the fact of my skin color, you felt like you needed to insert side missions based on my skin color. Like, I don't know, I just that found, it's kind of the panderverse thing, right? Like, it's like you're just pandering to me because of the way that I look, and it just feels a little disingenuous sometimes.
Interesting. So I watched the gameplay. I don't have a PS5, so I couldn't play it, which hurts my soul. But I'm wondering, like, I didn't feel it as strongly as I feel like a lot of people have reacted to Spider-Man 2. For example, like with the Brooklyn, I think you're talking about the Brooklyn Visions sort of side quests for
Yeah.
Miles Morales. How do you think we as a society, as a 2023 class tier of human beings, how should we represent diverse relationships? Because I wonder, like, if there is a critique for Miles setting up this prom date for a gay couple, does that mean like video games should never show any gay couples? Does that mean video games should never talk about race?
Yeah, no, I
How
don't
should
think
we
that's
balance that?
Yeah, that's a real struggle because, when you get into a lot of this conversation, because that doesn't typically bother me. Now, it just depends on how heavy-handed it is a lot of the time.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that specific one wasn't as big of a deal, but at the same time, it's like my son was playing the game some, and he's younger, and it's like some of those conversations you're just not always ready for when a kid's
I
playing
see.
something. So you run into those obstacles with situations like this.
Mhm.
But for me, no, I mean, I would definitely not say that it shouldn't happen, period, or ever, or, it's just about tact and
Yes.
how I feel like that is what's missing most of the time, is handling things with some level of, I don't know, I keep saying tact, but
Tact is great.
yeah, I mean, that's really the best way that I can kind of pinpoint it.
Right. I
And
also struggle with sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, you're good. I worry a lot of the times that sometimes it comes across as more offensive than anything, if it's
Mhm.
done certain ways, and
Yeah.
that's just kind of in bad taste, in my opinion. And a lot of the times it comes from these woke white folks who are like trying to pander to someone, and I'm just like,
Right.
guys, like, what are we doing?
Right. Yeah. I felt like Miles's role in Spider-Man 2 was very limited. I don't know. I just
Hmm.
felt like he had a bigger in the Into the Spider-Verse movies.
Yeah,
There was a bigger world around him. And he really wasn't just reduced to, like, Miles Morales, the Black Spider-Man. There was
right,
just a lot more going on. Granted, now are they talking about themes of feeling like the incorrect Spider-Man? Are they kind of, making certain assumptions? Sure, but I feel like they're doing it in that way, that way that has tact, that way that has taste and like grace,
right.
that makes you really think, because it's a much more layered, complex story. And right now I'm talking about the Spider-Verse for anyone who feels
Hmm.
like they're lost. I'm just talking about the sort of relationship between Miguel O'Hara and Spider-Man. There's this bigger narrative around Miles being sort of the incorrect Spider-Man. Does it go into race a bit? Yes, but it is a sort of, it's a storyline that I think a lot of people can relate to regardless of your background. Whereas I can see what you mean in the Spider-Man 2 game, where everything's verbalized and it's on the
Right.
nose and it's like, okay, this, that, and the third. Um,
With I have a question for you.
yes.
With Miles, there's a large portion of people that say, because the big narrative now, and especially even in this game, and they kind of did it in the movie too, where it's like it's this narrative of like I am Spider-Man, right?
Mhm.
How do
Yes.
you feel about? There's a lot of people that in the comic book community that say like Miles is not Spider-Man.
Mhm.
Miles is Miles Morales. Like
Yes.
he's like that's kind of this quote that is thrown out a lot. And I was
Mhm.
curious how you felt about that, and not even being like a deep comic book fan, as far as
Right.
like do you find that more offensive to just say like, oh, Miles isn't Spider-Man, or is it, do you get where they're coming from?
Ooh, that's a very good question. Because huh. It depends on whether Miles is in the same universe, I think, as an alive Peter Parker.
Right.
Because if Peter was the original, like, Spider-Man that first got bit, um, okay, this is gonna have spoilers. I'm kind of giving everyone a heads up. If you haven't seen Into the Spider-Verse, I might spoil it a little bit, but in Into the Spider-Verse, Miles does get bit from a spoiler by a spider from another universe. And we already had the Peter Parker in his world that was bit. Peter Parker was bit
Hmm.
by a spider in his universe. However, they do occupy the same universe, and we have the other universes. Peter Parker come and train Miles, so there is an established Spider-Man, right? The only reason I would maybe say I hear the person who says Peter Parker is Spider-Man is just because there is an existing Spider-Man, and that's
Right.
probably what they're getting at with the argument. I
Yeah.
can also see where you don't need to die on that hill. That
Right.
that Peter Parker is the only Spider-Man, because in the creation of Miles Morales, that's sort of the core of Miles's is identity slash character, is that he has some of Uncle Aaron's traits of being a criminal. And so does that make him like a bad Spider-Man? Does that make him, does that illegitimize his existence as a superhero, as Spider-Man, as a man with Spider-Man traits? It's tricky. It's
Right.
tricky. I do think some fans might just be having a hard time with the Peter Parker that they've grown up with, now having
Right.
to share that, because Miles is very, very new.
Right.
Um, but at the same time, I do think I kind of like the concept of anyone can wear the mask,
Right.
because at its core, it's not saying that, okay, now the mask is going to Miles Morales only, and there's no Peter Parker. Think of like I'm very vaguely familiar with like the Captain America slash Falcon thing, but
Right.
Falcon then becomes the Captain America, I believe, from the TV
Yeah.
show.
Yeah, and
Um,
he took the mantle in the comic books at one point as well. It was
Interesting.
received a little better in the comics, I think, than it was
Yeah.
recently, just because they, in that show, they took a hyper race based
Ooh.
approach to bringing Falcon in as Captain America, and it
Yeah.
was not great. It is hands
Mm,
down my least favorite Marvel show. It, to the
yeah.
point in which when he officially dons the suit of Captain America, he comes down and lands, and he like does it by lecturing people about race when he does it. And you're just like,
Okay.
oh wow, this is not great.
Okay. Yeah. See, I don't and I think the fact that it's not as popular as Spider-Man and Miles Morales is because
Right.
of that note that that they play on. But
Right.
I personally think even this could actually be a good like diversity class for like diversity admins or whatever.
Right.
Is like the idea of anyone can wear the mask.
Hmm.
Is as if to say it doesn't vilify an other. It just says,
Right.
hey, if you feel like you can take on the responsibility of saving New York, no matter what you look like, you can kind of do it.
Right.
And again, Spider-Man is a fictitious character, so I really don't think anyone should be taking anything too seriously. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
People
that's my two
take it
cents on that.
quite seriously.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. And I mean, to a degree, I get it. I mean, Spider-Man's always been, one of my favorites too. And I
Right.
never had that slogan has never really, I get what people mean by it. And I think I
Mhm.
also agree kind of where you're saying, where it's like, if you have these two characters in the same universe existing at the same time, maybe you don't call Miles, Spider-Man, maybe he's Miles, like, or, whatever the case may be. But I
Mhm.
mean, I also, I just don't, I feel like a lot of people fixate on things worse than they should. And,
Yeah.
and it does tend to give folks a bad look when they're hyper fixating in the wrong area.
Yes, exactly. It
Eh,
honestly, I would even go as far as to say like it is a bad look. Like not only does it
right.
give a bad look, but it is a bad look because it kind of exposes like what are you bothered about really with fixating on this? I think isn't
Right.
there a Spider-Man that isn't Peter Parker? Like Scarlet Spider-Man or something like that.
The
Am
other
I
Scarlet Spider, yeah. There's an alternate universe one as well that's Ben Riley, or not, is it Riley
Yes.
Ben? Where he was like, it was like Uncle Ben, I think technically from another universe. So they got really
Mm,
wild. They started that like back in the 80s. I think I actually have the comic book where they
wow.
first did that. But yeah, so there are other people. So that's why I'm kind of like, but they
Yeah,
usually call them like Spider-Man 2049 or Spider-Man whatever.
exactly.
Whereas
Yeah.
typically with Miles, it's just like he's Spider-Man.
Spider-Man. Because it's like, what would you call Miles? I feel like the
Right.
fact that he does have a different suit, I think
Right.
visually that distinguishes him as
Yeah.
a different Spider-Man. Sorry for anyone who's watching that hasn't played the game. I just wanted to quickly ask, what did you think of Wraith, the character Wraith in Spider-Man 2?
Wraith. I'm trying to think of who you're talking
The
about.
cop, Yuri
Oh,
from
Yuri.
Spider-Man
Yes, yes, yes,
1.
yes, yes, yes. Yeah, I'd forgotten. Yeah.
What was up with Yuri just having superhuman strength with no origin story?
Right. Yeah. I have
Did
no
you
idea.
notice
That was
that?
wild. I don't know why they did that. I don't know what that was. They just like I'm like, is this gonna be some DLC or something? Like you just injected this character, like made him a superhero. They have abilities, or yeah, I have no idea what's going on with that.
Because if you haven't played the game, in the first Spider-Man, Yuri is a cop, a NYPD cop, I believe, and in Spider-Man 2, there is a DLC where Yuri kind of has like a vengeance thing going on with an Italian mob, and then Spider-Man 2, Yuri just comes back as a superhero to the powerful level of Spider-Man. Like they're both fighting the same
Right.
villains at the same time. That was the only part for me where I was like, okay, this is weird, and it kind of is giving like a woke element because it's like,
Right.
what even is the point of Spider-Man having powers if you could just get a chain and like do the same thing? Anyway, so I just
Yeah.
wanted to briefly go down a tangent on that, but
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Otherwise, to wrap things up, I do appreciate everything you've shared about the Marvels. I think
Yeah.
in this YouTube space, um, again, I've mentioned this before in other videos and live streams, maybe in the first live stream we did, but I think there's a temptation to sort of exaggerate the bad assets of something, bad aspects rather
Yeah.
of things. Do you notice that? Is that something
I
you're kind of catching on to?
I hate it.
Yeah.
It comes across as very griftery,
Yeah.
and I don't really like it. And I'm just
Yeah.
not. It follows along suit also with like the reaction videos, right? Where it's
Yes.
just like it's the same type of thing where it's like people are having these hyper fixated emotions, and it's theatrical. It's not real,
Yes.
right? And I
Yeah.
think that a lot of people's opinions in this internet age are the exact same way. Where I'm just like, you guys
Mhm.
are taking an opinion, cranking it up to 10, and then just like running with it as fast as you can. And I
Mhm.
think that that's a lot of how internet culture has become. I think that that's a lot of how the YouTube space has become. And a lot of the people that, I mean, and even people that I like and know personally in this space as well, they get caught up in this cycle where it's just
Mhm.
like it's almost like this cycle of negativity and hate, and just like instead of like the glass half full or like looking for the upside of things, they are a little bit more focused on and listening to all of these people that are just fueling this negativity. And I'm just not that type of
Absolutely.
person, and I just really
Absolutely.
don't like it. I think it's really toxic, and I think it's bad for society as a whole.
Yeah, no, I agree. I would say my going into the Marvels, I had a very like my expectations were extremely low.
Right.
But it was about 60, I would say even 65%. I
Right.
actually had fun. I laughed throughout the movie. It would have been maybe a fairly decent movie if it was a studio, say like Angel Studios. Angel Studios put out a movie or a project to the quality of the Marvels. I think people would have been like, "Oh, this is decent."
Right.
Um, but of course, because it's Marvel and we've had this history of just decline and deterioration,
Well, and they had
uh,
10 years of wall-to-wall bangers. Like,
exactly. They
like
had set the bar so high.
mhm.
And so now we have this, and there's so much going on around it. But again, I would say my expectations were, were exceeded by just a little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit. I mean,
Right.
it wasn't much beyond the trailer, but thank you so
Right.
much for sharing your honest opinion
Yeah.
on the Marvels and talking about this. I think there's
Sure.
definitely a broader discussion that we could have about everything going on with the internet, but it's too big,
Right.
too much for one live stream right
Right.
now.
Right. Yeah. How long you got?
I mean, exactly. It's dense. So if anyone does want to share their opinion on the Marvels, if you have seen it, I would
Right.
highly recommend checking out Blaine's app called Criticless, both an app and a website,
Yeah.
criticless.com. You can drop your review. It is not fresh or rotten like another company out there.
Exactly.
It has a sliding scale all the way to most excellent, I believe.
Yep.
And you can also express your review in a written form, rate it according to a political bias, and many more other little like themes
Yeah.
for movies. So if you do want to share your opinion on the Marvels, head over to criticless.com. Blaine, thanks so much for joining me today and just talking about this very sincerely.
Yeah.
And I will catch you on the Criticless app otherwise.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a blast. Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Bye for now, guys.